Hey there, it is Friday once again. I am Julie Hirschberg joining you for our live video chats every Friday here on our Reactive Facebook page. And if you don't know me, if you don't know Reactive is a therapy and wellness center in the Los Angeles area. We have a couple of locations where our mission is to help people with neurologic disorders to recover movement, strength, confidence in a way that promotes neuroplasticity through changing their brain. And we do this in a lot of different ways. We do it in one-on-one therapy, we have PT, we have OT, we have personal trainers, we do it in group exercise, and we do it through education. And that's a big piece that I'm talking about today. So thanks for joining me. We This month of October is just a really big month for us at Reactive. We're doing so many things. We're launching our first online boot camp, for example, for people with Parkinson's. That's coming up this month. We're doing a lot of education and training on neuroplasticity, and we have, and it's tomorrow, a weekend course for physical therapists, for occupational therapists, all about how to cultivate connectivity and nervous system connectivity in people with complex disorders like functional movement disorders, CRPS, dystonia. Um, Believe it or not, I know those things all sound very different. They have a lot of overlap. And one of the overlap is that its neuroplasticity has kind of gone awry, and we help people establish positive neuroplasticity. So, one of the things that we did as part of our course that I'm going to give you a sneak peek is we created this workbook. And I say we in meaning a lot of people collaborated on the content, but really Brittany Kim, her student Chris Park, really put so much work into making this a very usable, beautiful thing. So today in our live, what I want to talk about is what are the pieces of understanding a person's belief about diagnosis? Like, what is that and why is it important? How can we structure our back and forth? When I say education, there's a lot of back and forth. We're learning from a person, the person's learning from us, but especially so that we can match a person's understanding of their diagnosis with the education. And how we're going to really use our workbook to talk through this, how workbook with all the tools in one place might be really beneficial, because I think you have all the tools. And I know I do. And I carry around this little folder, actually. It looks like this. And it has all of my printouts to it because I also like hard tools. Sometimes I'm on telehealth and I'm sharing my screen, but I like hard pictures that I can draw on and things. So let's dive in, okay? And let's talk about first, how do we understand the person's belief about the diagnosis? And this is actually how we specifically structured this workbook. Because if you think about it, sometimes we just dive right in, like, here's everything to know about pain or about Parkinson's or about anything. And I would say, and I would argue, the first thing that we should know is, what do you know? Like, what do you know and understand about your diagnosis? So, little contents here, but the first piece of the book is, what is a functional movement disorder? It can be a really confusing diagnosis. And the very first question here to guide us with the person in front of us is, what is your understanding of your diagnosis? And what do you think is contributing to your symptoms? So, yes, it's in a workbook, but that question, as part of pretty much every evaluation you do, would be a great question. It starts that process of really understanding the person and their beliefs so that you don't just go into generic education about things for everybody, but you meet somebody in the middle. Where are they at and how do you meet that education? So that's where we start. that should be the first thing that you do before diving into any sort of explanation or advice, is wondering where the person starts with. Um, and hey, Diana, thanks for joining in. Clear structure, it helps to absorb such a large info in a more effective and less overwhelming way. Exactly. So when you have it structured, it can be really helpful. And by the way, when you put it into a workbook, that can seem, I think this is like 25 pages long, that can seem overwhelming too. So it's important to go, here's what we're talking about today. Like that first session, it might just be all about your beliefs, your understanding, what's contributing to the symptoms. Now, you might then be able to meet that person. They may say, well, I understand it's about the connection piece, and my doctor said it was a software problem and not a hardware problem. Great. That's such a great analogy. What do you understand about that? Like, what does that mean to you? Keep probing, keep diving. If you need help with that, we then have a page. This is a software problem, not a hardware problem. And one of the reasons I love this analogy of software and hardware is that it helps get away from that idea that somebody probably has heard, is that it's all in your head. Um, because it's not. It is in your brain and it's a software problem. It doesn't show up on a traditional MRI, but that doesn't mean that it's made up or that it's all in your head. And this can be a really helpful piece to talk through in that first day. Or again, maybe not. Maybe you have a really good understanding about that. And then this just becomes something for their reference. Sometimes it's helpful to know that you're not alone, right? So one of the pieces of our workbook, common symptoms. So sometimes you're the only person that you know that has these tremors, right? Well, actually, those tremors are a very common functional movement disorder. Um, and on the second piece of this, and this is something that I would say almost 100% of the time comes up in that first session. It's part of setting the stage for intervention, is that optimal theory, enhanced expectancies. Recovery is possible. So we highlight a couple of cases of people who share their story very publicly on social media or on YouTube, and there's videos that they have, and it talks through, this person had a concussion and developed a functional movement disorder, and watch her recovery. This is a college student who had functional paralysis and sensory loss, and here's his recovery. So knowing recovery is possible is a big step in that initial intervention. And perhaps that comes up in the workbook when the person says, I've been told recovery is not possible. And then you can go, well, let me show you a couple of examples. And I usually pull up my computer and show videos too. So stepping through some of the other pieces, understanding your condition. This is probably one of my favorite pieces. And it goes back into that pie chart that we talk about a lot, that person's pie chart. How might they understand what's contributing to their symptoms? Their nervous system, their tissues, life, and the environment. And then we go into a lot of detail, like, what areas of your brain do you think are involved here? How do you ask somebody that? I love this. It actually is a little checklist of different pieces and what symptoms might be involved. Um, Tissues is something that people are a little more familiar with, muscles, ligaments, etc. So what is that person? And again, we're not starting with like, what do we think? What is their belief? Where do you feel you need more strength? Where do you need more flexibility? What parts do you need to be more mobile? Again, I love the emphasis on the person's belief and understanding first. And then finally, the environment. So our very famous river runneth over analogy. We actually beefed up our analogy here, by the way, as if you recall, if you've seen this one before in our river runneth over, we just had sandbags along the side here. And the more I thought about this analogy, the more the sandbag seemed kind of temporary. And when we talk about what we do for connection in therapy, the it's not temporary. We might actually be providing tools so the person can dig a wider river or lay like bricks and major foundation to shore up their river. So we changed the river runneth over a little bit because we thought it could keep getting better. So how the environment influences the system. And then our very famous pie chart, right? So how does the person understand those pieces together? How much is tissues? How much is nervous system? How much is environment? How much is life? That gives us such a huge understanding. And so that is like half of the workbook is what is that person's understanding? I can't emphasize this enough. Understanding the person is going to give you more clues than any testing that you'll ever do. And it's going to set you on that path of recovery. We talk about the team, so how we'll work together and what to expect. We talk about this treatment journey. I know you've seen this too. So this is our little road map with flares, right? So we might have some twists and turns in the journey. So it's helpful to, again, not everything on the first day, but it's helpful to put this in to put this in ahead of time, ahead of the flare, is letting person know that it's common. And Tammy says getting better is a positive visual. That's the other thing too, is in here, it's like you're still on that uphill climb, uphill part of the journey. The next section then is all about what will it take? Such an important part of that initial conversation. And once more, it starts with questions. Questions for the person, and this is from a great article out of MGH in Boston. Maggio is the neuro PT who head up this article, great article, looking at questions of how well do you understand the diagnosis, how much you agree with the diagnosis, and how much you expect to recover. Because that understanding, those beliefs about a functional movement disorder are so important. So as we work through the workbook, we get started. We're going to get moving. We're going to determine the treatment needs. So we'll set goals, and it actually has that in here. I love when we actually get things down in writing. So setting those goals together. And this is the second part of the pie chart. Together, we will determine what part is sensory information, motor, physical tissue issues, lifestyle changes, nervous system regulation, and we're going to put together a pie to set up that treatment program. I do like to do that in the first or second visit so the person knows exactly why we're doing all these like crazy sensory things sometimes. This is why. Setting up the nervous system for neuroplasticity. So our OT, so phenomenal, Naoya, worked on some of those lifestyle pieces. So this is kind of like a little vision board of pieces that contribute to neuroplasticity. And then the person has the opportunity then to start small. I love that. Sometimes when things are so overwhelming, what is one small thing that you can do this week? I really love that. Such a wonderful little piece from our OT. You can see why the whole book itself all at once would be overwhelming. So again, if you're starting with what questions the person has, what their understanding is, you would dive into different pieces like the autonomic nervous system and nervous system regulation. So we give a little visual of the window based on the polyvagal theory of that window of stress tolerance and our sympathetic fight or flight, or our dorsal vagal, which is that freeze and collapse, and where we want to build that ventral vagal, that safe and social part of us in the autonomic nervous system. So that becomes a big question for some people. So that's a great little visual and understanding there. And again, it asks the question, how wide is your window? And then you can use that as we talk about, oh, I had a really bad flare. What was happening? How wide was your window at that time if we know the autonomic nervous system is contributing? Okay, last little pieces. We talk very, like, you probably have all seen this too. It's our energy piggy bank with pacing. And then we work into some exercises and medicine. So, we talk about RPE and we talk about heart rate max a lot with people. So we built those into the workbook so that people can use those really readily to monitor exercise and set up and goal set current exercise activity, barriers, and goals. This has been super helpful in some of the workbooks that we've used. We use this in the PACE HD study in Huntington's. We use it with people with Parkinson's. And it's just generally really helpful for everyone trying to change an exercise habit. And last but not least, this one I'm super excited about because this is the backbone of our course. What are the pieces that go into cultivating central nervous system connectivity? And when we say connectivity, you can't help but think of plants and cultivating plants, right? And growth. So in this visual, when we talk about nervous system training, this visual helps us put all of the pieces together. So for example, this is our brain tree. I don't know if you can see that really well, but it even has little flowers growing in its hair. But the soil, so the soil is really important, right? So that's our optimized for neuroplasticity, sleep, systemic health, nutrition, fitness, safety, stress arousal. We talk about good old compost. I'm a composter at home. I had to put compost in here. But what resources might need to be added to that soil? Are there physical limitations that need to be addressed, underlying issues that can be resolved? We have to talk about the weather. I've been really big on talking about beyond the biopsychosocial, but really talking about this interface of a person and the environment. What with their culture, their beliefs, social and physical context, how is that influencing? Are there too many clouds? Is there too much sun? Are they getting scorched? So that can change the cultivation part. Watering. By the way, the person's the gardener here, right? We're not a gardener. We're like a gardening book for people, but we're not a gardener. The person's the gardener. They have a lot of control here. They're watering, right? So they're helping control the sensory input and the things that are being input to grow the soil. And we're going to direct that. We might direct some of the watering. We're going to direct some of the pruning for sure. So we're going to reinforce some really positive connections, and we're going to help undo some of aberrant connections. And that's the big part of reconnecting in disorders of connection, right? So that's what we're talking about. So then we can actually identify, where do we start with this training? We may highlight, like, we're going to start here. So we're going to start with sensory. For example, we're going to start with some of the motor control pruning. We might need to start in the soil because, of course, something can't grow well if the soil is not tended to. So there you have it. We also are very common additional resources. Some of my favorite things in the world, fndhope.org, neurosymptoms.org, and rare diseases have a page on functional neurologic disorders. I'm often sending those to people, so we have that here. Some places for notes, and that's it. My goodness, it's a lot. I know it's all of those analogies, educational resources that we use. We don't use these all at once, right? So again, I'll reinforce, we listen and we respond and we meet somebody where they're at versus just throwing all that education at a person at once. I think that actually would do more harm than good. So I I hope you love that as much as I did. I'm so very excited to have that in one place. We're going to have it as something that's printed here at the clinic. It's part of our weekend course, the Cultivating Central Nervous Connectivity. And it's basically a how to manual and to put it into practice. One of the things that I realize a lot working with a lot of clinicians is we all love, love, love to learn and take courses. And I mean, I could sit in courses and learn all day long, to be honest. And sometimes it's hard to put it into action. And so that was a big emphasis of our course this weekend and this workbook is how do you put it into action? And I would really like charge you if you are learning and taking courses and putting things together is like directly taking that into resources that you can use every day so you can put it into action. I thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be super busy this weekend with our course. You can still join, by the way. I will put that up in here. And Tammy is asking too for the 3 links. So I'm going to put those in here too. We had neurosymptoms.org, one of my favorite websites. That one is really helpful for people new to functional neurologic disorders. I'm going to bring up the other one. FMDhope.org is another really good one. So FMDhope.org. Thanks for asking the questions. And then rarediseases.org. Love that website too, because I see a lot of people with rare diseases. Rarediseases.org/rare diseases. And it's FMD. So I hope that pulls up. I hope I get that in there all typed in. But they also have a great site on functional neurologic disorders. So great resources to learn from, to share with people that you meet who might have these disorders. And come join us this weekend if you want to learn more. By the way, we're recording all of it, so you don't have to join us live. But live is where a lot of the discussion is going to happen. So we hope you could join us then. We're having Dr. Alan Wu and Laura Ettinger join us. And we had a bunch of people submit cases from all over the country. And I'm really excited to share those with our physicians too and get their input on management. So that is happening this weekend. I hope you'll join us. And until then, I'll see you next week. Thanks so much.